In this video, I'll go over 10 albums I consider near perfect, if not perfect, going roughly from least perfect to most perfect. These aren't the only albums I consider near perfect, they're some ones I felt like talking about. I'm also limiting myself to one album per artist because if I didn't, you'd be seeing a lot of the same few artists here. I will also say this doesn't really reflect my personal preference, i.e. my emotional response to each of these albums. That is to say that there are some albums I consider more perfect than others that I don't prefer on an emotional level, but I still think are better in an objective sense, though it's obviously still my opinion. I'm just viewing these more analytically than I am purely on an emotional level. This album is just gorgeous. It is beyond beautiful. The emotion that went into this album is just so apparent and comes out so strongly. It's really calming, sad, and mesmerizing. It's able to be really subtle, but also having a lot of layered and heavier moments. The melodies are beautiful, the guitar work is incredible, and when the synths come in, they work wonders. The emotional peaks this album hits just transcend words. The end of I Should've Known Better, 4th of July, All of Me Wants All of You, The Only Thing, Blue Bucket of Gold in its outro, just to name a few. But every song provides something that hits you deep in some way. This album is a personal favorite of mine, but looking at it more analytically, there are some songs I like more than others. That's not to say they're not all great, it's just some are so good that it's hard for others to match. But still, I love this album more than most things in my life, and I actually prefer it on an emotional level to most of the albums on here. The Strokes on their debut were able to come through with one of the catchiest and smoothest rock albums ever. This album is just so consistent. Every song is great for its own reason, but all are united under having slick guitars played perfectly, with just the perfect amount of distortion, hooks that are catchy as hell, and a smooth delivery on the vocals. The production is pristine, not too clean but not too rugged, and every song hits hard in some way. If there is one reason I don't consider this album to be like the pinnacle of perfection, it's because the ninth song, which depending on the release you're looking at is either New York City Cops or When It Started, is a little bit of a dip in quality in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, both are good songs, but When It Started isn't quite at the same caliber of memorableness as the rest of the album, and New York City Cops deviates from the album's vibe a little bit, as it's a lot punkier and less chill, I guess. But that doesn't mean I ever skip them when they come on. It's just a little bit of a dip, but that's just my opinion. All in all, though, damn near perfect. I talked about this album in my Ween album ranking, and I'm talking about it again. I ranked it there as my #1 Ween album, and for good reason. This album is so entertaining, eclectic, well-performed, and fun. Every song is so unique and different from the last. It feels more like a compilation album of a band's best songs than it is just another Ween album. Honestly, I won't say any more about it. If you want to hear my thoughts, go watch my Ween ranking, because if I can use this as an opportunity to get someone acquainted with Ween, which I think that video is good for, then I'll have done my job. I will say, though, the reason it's in the bottom few is because there is one song that I don't like that much, and I do usually skip, but hey, 15 out of 16 is near perfect. OK Computer holds a very personal place in my heart. This to me is just how alternative rock music should sound. To be honest, it's hard for me to dissect this album analytically because it's just so fundamental to who I am as a musician and a music listener that I don't view it how I view other albums. What I will say is that I love every song to some degree, and I think some of the best songs of all time show up on this album. Paranoid Android, Letdown, No Surprises. Even the weakest moments like Electioneering and Fitter Happier I think offer some pretty cool things. I love Fitter Happier's chilling atmosphere and background instrumentation, and Electioneering is just so loud and aggressive that it really makes a statement, though I do think it's a little weaker than the rest of the songs on the album. Still, I think this will forever be one of the greatest albums of all time, and for good reason. A Crow Looked at Me, in case you don't know, was written right after the death of Phil Elverum's wife, and it acts as a journal almost on what's immediately going on with him preceding her death. Because of that, it is dark and sad, like overwhelmingly so. This album is emotional, but it's emotional in a different way than a lot of other sad albums. I think Fantano puts it very well when he says,
"It's most certainly music. What I think this album is not is entertainment."
But it's because of this unwavering sadness that I think it's near perfect. Listening to it is an experience like no other. It does not matter what mood you're in, once you put this album on, it will drop. It almost smothers you in its sadness, like the weight of 50 giant blankets on top of you. I think the lack of entertainment is kind of this album's Achilles heel, but that doesn't mean it's not pretty much flawless. Every song is great and builds on the album's narrative, and they somehow don't blend into each other, which is something I could see an album like this falling into. It's really something. I do recommend listening to it, but just know, brace yourself. Another classic debut album here, and it's pretty much picture perfect. I love this album because it puts you in such a great mood when you're listening to it, with maybe the exception of Say It Ain't So, which is still a mind-blowingly great song, but it really is a nice upbeat album that always makes me happy when I listen to it. I love the mix of acoustic and electric guitar on some songs, My Name is Jonas, The World Has Turned Left Me Here, Sweater Song, In the Garage, Only in Dreams. I think it's mixed so well that it gives the songs a really unique sound that I don't think is replicated elsewhere in Weezer's discography, at least from what I've heard. I also really like the song Topics on this album. No one else in the world has turned Left Me Here sort of tell the story of a overly protective guy who gets left by his girlfriend. Sweater Song is of course a classic, great metaphor. Surf Fox America is hilarious. In the Garage is really sentimental. Of course I have to mention the crunchy guitar tones that really work wonders. The guitar solos are fantastic, and all the songs are just really catchy and fun. There might be some songs I like a little more than others, but honestly not by that much. The album is pretty much perfect. The Dark Side of the Moon is an incredible album from start to finish. Of the albums on this list, it's definitely the best album experience. It's something of a concept album, and all the songs blend into each other really nicely. You have some all-time greats like Time, Breathe, Us and Them, which I think are some of the best songs ever. It really feels like you're floating in space when listening to the album. The production is just that great, and the guitars and synths are just that spacey and psychedelic. It can be beautiful, it can rock hard, and anything in between. The lyrics are great and deal with different subjects of human existence: time, money, war, mental illness. All in all, one of the best albums ever by what in my opinion is the greatest band of all time. And another very emotional and dark pick, I think Elliott Smith's self-titled is almost as close to perfect as you can get. I would describe this album as less sad and more dark. Like, this isn't an album of someone who's in a sad, pitiful state. It's someone who's depressed and is almost angry about it. Like, they're just done with life and don't want to be hopeful. And this energy persists pretty much the entire way through in a way that really unifies the album. Though it does feature a somewhat diverse array of instruments alongside acoustic guitar like harmonica, accordion, drums, the songs are pretty stripped back. Yet they're able to convey such energy and atmosphere in a way that really cloaks your listening experience and draws you in. The production can be a little harsh at times with the transients, but I just think that adds to the very harsh nature of the music itself. This isn't really an album you put on for leisure. You have to be in a pretty dark state to truly enjoy it. But when you are in that state, it's just perfect. Every song is amazing and adds to the album's dark tone, even in somewhat lighter moments, which I feel like are almost lighter, like sarcastically, like the song Coming Up Roses. I have no complaints about this album. It's just incredible. This is another one kind of like Is This It that is just so consistent and consistently great. I could see someone criticizing it for almost being too consistent, as the shoegazy sound does not let up, but I think that's an unfair critique because when you really get into the album, each song is great for its own reason. The songs are luscious and heavy with that tremolo distortion that just never dissipates, and the result is a truly beautiful sound. The album is notorious for having the vocals mixed really quiet, almost like another instrument, and I just think that adds to the vibe of just being lost in an array of sound, almost like you're on some crazy drug trip. I do think the album is a bit of an acquired taste. It certainly took me a while to get into, but once you do, it's just perfect. I guess there are some standout songs like Only Shallow, When You Sleep, I Come In Alone, and Sometimes, but honestly, they aren't that much better than the rest of the songs on the album. Like I said, it's incredibly consistent. Here we are at the end, and what I think is as close as you can get to musical perfection. Abbey Road is sort of similar to Chocolate and Cheese in that it doesn't really have a consistent sound to it. Rather, it's a collection of some of the most classic songs of all time, really feeling more like a compilation album than anything else. I think the production is truly stellar. The instruments sound so good, there's such great balance, it's so clean, the bass really shines through. The first half of the album is a collection of classics, while the second half is a medley that's a classic in itself. There are beautiful songs like Something and Here Comes the Sun, hard rockers like She's So Heavy. There are fun song topics like Maxwell's Silver Hammer and Octopus's Garden. To me, this album defines the Beatles, like it is the Beatles album. It doesn't get more classic than this in my opinion, and it doesn't get more perfect. Let me know in the comments some albums you think are perfect and any recommendations based on these. Obligatory plug to my music, check the links in the description if you want. Anyways, that's it.